Hi, Melissa Klein here, and I wanted to walk you through a couple things with our next exercise, which is about color. And a good deal of my college career was spent taking little pieces of paper and organizing them how to see how they looked like next to each other. I studied under Cy Silberman, who was a student of Joseph Albers, who is sort of considered one of the leading color theorists of the 20th century. That all sounds like heady stuff, but a good deal of what I did was for Cy's classes was we had pieces of paper that looked kind of like this. They were a little bit bigger. They were even a tiny bit bigger than this. And we would cut them up and put little pieces against each other and experiment with how we could make colors change based on that. And so today's exercise is sort of a dual purpose, not sort of, is a dual purpose. Some of you had asked me about, what do you mean, like you're doing all this stuff, like when you go to, like, a lot of times for my demos I have like my paint tray off to the side or even off camera, or a good deal of it off camera, and you can't see, like, how am I loading up my brush, and you're like, what are you doing? So I'm gonna walk you through some of the basics of how to load, what I mean by painting thick over thin and loading up your brush with paint, and some different ways to handle that. But to start off with, what I've done, and I have to laugh because I'm always avoiding measuring because I don't know what it is, but numbers tend to slide off my brain. I've really tried to, like, not accept that. Like, don't have a self-limiting belief about even numbers. All right, I don't want to fall into that story. Anyway, I find the easiest way to divide a piece of paper in half or into quarters is I will just take I'll just fold it like so, and then fold it again like so, and then in this case I freehand drew this, and what I did, and I don't have my pencil handy because it's using, but what I did is you want to look at the space in between, like the space, don't look at, to draw a straight line, look at the white space, not so much the line itself. So when I drew this, it was like this. And the reason why you're not seeing that on camera is because, like, I had an alarm go off and all kinds of things went haywire, so that was ruined. Same thing, and it's also easier to draw down. And I'm noticing I'm not doing this with my wrist. You can for sketchy effects, that's cool. But if you want to draw like a smooth straight line, I'm going from my shoulder, and my eyes over here, my eye is following my finger like so. And the funny thing is I'm not even looking at my line. I'm like, oh yeah. And of course there's some slight variations. I spent weeks in a different one of Cy's classes drawing just straight lines on large pads. So, a lot of it is like kind of like the Karate Kid, which I didn't really like that movie so much, but where it's like wax on, wax off. And also for this one, I'm choosing to use the smooth side of the paper because I don't want to have the texture interfere so much with what we're going to do with our color experiment. And because I'm a little bit cheap on stuff sometimes, I'm like, not, I have plenty of blue tape. Maybe I need to give that up. But at any rate, I'm just kind of tacking this in here. Like, and as usual, paint has gotten everywhere. So not even trying. All right. So what I've done is I have this in 4 quadrants, and I am going to use my flat brush. And I've chosen for this color experiment, I want you to pick 4 colors that you feel are really different as you possibly can. I'm going for choosing the primaries, but also a little bit of, this is like one of my oldest paint sets. I believe this is the set that my sister gave me when I was in high school. You can see, like, I'm out of some of these colors. And so I kind of went for primaries. So I went for the yellow, the red, although it's a blue red, they have an orange red, but I'm pretty much out of that one. And this is a phthalo. It's like PHTHAL. This is a thalocene blue. This would have been the ultramarine blue. And now obviously the green is not a primary color, but it's a convenience color that I felt was the most different from everything else I had. So what I'm doing here is I've got a big bucket of, actually this used to have horse supplement in it. I like these big like gallon buckets for putting my paint water in. Like a lot of times I notice that people will have like 1 inch of water in the bottom of a glass or a cup like this or something, which this isn't bad. This is like the minimum size of paint water I would use, and this is handy for traveling. But they'll put like just 1 inch, and I'm like, your paint water is going to get so dirty, and then you're going to wonder why your watercolors are muddy. So there, I said it. I'm going to rinse my brush, and then I'm choosing to use a flat brush. Although actually I think I'm going to use this one instead. It's flat as well, but I kind of like how the angle gets into the corners. So I'm rinsing it just to get a little bit damp, and then wiping it on the side of the container. Okay. If I wanted to do like a big wash, I would probably just dip it and just do a tap or something. But right now, I just want it kind of damp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to paint what is known as thick. You know, putting the paint on thick. I also love the phrase, man, she's laying it on thick. Or I also like to think about, you know, when somebody puts on like tons of makeup and they like cake it on thick. And when I was in college, a lot of times people use the phrase painting thick over thin, and I had no idea what that was. They just assumed I knew what that was because I had pretty good drawing skills. But I didn't. It wasn't until like after I got out of college. I wish I'd just like been like, hey, what the hell? All right, now since I've already have this blue kind of smeared here, again, dipping and just wiping on the side. Just I'm doing the same thing. I don't know why I felt just that it's forced to have it. And I am going to, and I've let this paint kind of hang out. And yeah, like I used a water sprayer to spray, you know, water into these. And so this is my gouache set. And this is going to can go on thick like poster paint. All right, so I'm going to try to go for a really like even opaque color. Oh my God, that color is gorgeous. Don't stress too much about like, you know, I want it to look kind of tidy because the main reason why, aside from slight OCD issues, that I want it to look tidy is that I don't want there to be a lot of texture to interfere with the purposes of, I just want to see how the color interacts. I dipped my brush and I just added a little bit of water, and now and here I'm just like, this is what I mean by loading up that brush. Like I'm just like, you know, this is ketchup or something. You know, it's like a sauce on there. And this paper, it's funny because our last Zoom session we talked about how, you know, we have these materials that we don't really like, but we're kind of, whether it's in this case it's my paper, but I'm not the only one that has that issue, or you know, various paints and stuff. But also realizing that you know, like, okay, fine, I've got this cheap demo paper. So I'm just, and the little bit of water I added just helps it, you know, kind of smear. But I've got a nice deep even texture, or you know, deep even color. I'm going back and forth, and it's drying a little bit, and so I'm trying to minimize the texture. You know, and God knows with me, with my various travels in between the pet hair and going on the beach and the sand and God knows what else is in there. And I see there is a little bit of texture, but all things considered. All right, so there's that. Boom. And so now all I'm doing right now is just, I'm really rinsing my brush, and I want my colors to be really pure, not mixing. In fact, ideally what I should have started with is the yellow because the blue, of course, this is the, as my father used to say, big mistakeless. But like the blue is, such a strong color, and it tends to like, you know, contaminate the other colors. Whereas the yellow, even though it is also a very strong color, if you get a little yellow mixed in with something else, it tends not to throw it away off so bad. In fact, I usually will order twice as much yellow as any other color. So like whenever I'm ordering tubes of paints or buying tubes of paints, just automatically I get 2 yellow for every one of every other color. Because it's just the nature of that pigment that it just seems to need. And it doesn't matter if it's like acrylic or watercolor or whatever. And in fact, I have extra. At one point, Crayon Dash offered, you could buy replacement cake pans. They don't seem to do that anymore, which is tragic. And I got a few extra yellows that are floating around somewhere. All right. So speaking of yellow, I'm going to go into the yellow now. And I even added a little bit more water. And I think I am going to put, oops, so I was looking at and again, you can see like, if I was using like watercolor from the tube, I would probably also be using a little bit of water in there. But I would be trying to get it kind of like this. And if you want to get rid of texture, like as you can see, there's, oops, and there you can see there's a little bit of that blue mixing in. Like if I was really like going to be on it, I should have just actually used soap and water to clean my brush, but I didn't feel like it for the purposes of the demo. Okay, so, all right. And yeah, this one I'm filming in real time so that you can sort of see a little bit how I'm working back and forth. I feel like, I kind of wish there was some sort of, like I had some sort of really funny joke to tell you while I did this. I always think of it, but one of you guys pointed out to me, yeah, well, we like watching paint dry, so. And probably what I'll do is once this dries, is I'll probably add another layer on top of it. Okay. And here is where I'm going to show you how to paint thin. So I'm just rinsing and tapping my brush and wiping it off. So I'm going to just dip into here. And I'm really praying that nothing on this is going to lift up. In fact, I'll go over here. I think this is a better spot. And painting more thin. All this means is that when you paint thin, it means that there's a lot of either water or whatever medium. So if you're painting in acrylic, you would have like either water or like you can get like gel mediums and stuff like that. And for that. and it also, as you can see, like this is part of why I don't bring my palette and stuff onto it, because it kind of like messes with things. This is thin, where it's just I'm not using that much paint relative. There's very little pigment in here. This is painting thin with lots of a medium or watercolor mixed into it. And that's all that is, really. In subsequent videos, I'm going to be showing you a few little other tips and tricks around loading up your brush. Again, I'm dipping my paintbrush in water, and then I'm just tapping the side. A little bit of a wipe is what I did on the side of the bucket. And I probably didn't even need to do that. And this is also what's known as a wash. And you can really see the contrast between thick paint and thin paint. I mean, ideally I would have showed it in the same color, but I think you can get the idea. And then in this case, I guess I'll go for like kind of what I call a medium, like somewhere in between. So I'm just gonna, and the nice thing about the gouache is that you can kind of see, it's fairly easy to see, like, give it, because of how it's almost like what I think of as like tempera. Okay, so I started to lay it on thin, and then I added a little bit more pigment to it. You know, and I also think, like, you know, laying it on thick is the idea that you're trying to cover up things. So like if I was painting with acrylic, and let's say there's just an area that I'm like, okay, that's fucked up, I would just, depending on how I felt, I would either add another layer to fix it, you know, or I might even just, I've known people who will just paint their entire canvas white with acrylic and just be like, okay, we're going to start again, you know, and they'll not do it. Some art historians will say, like, that's not really great, because over time the paint layers can come through. And here, unintentionally, I'm doing a little bit of a gradient, from a very rough gradient from, you know, darker to lighter, but I don't like that. And you'll see for the next piece of what we're gonna do, that how it's why I want to have this. I really just want to have color blocks, color fields. I don't really want them to be anything but a color field happening here. And as paint dries too, like, you'll kind of reach what I call a sweet spot, and this is almost at that point where, as I'm going back and forth with it, you know, I'm smoothing out the texture. Whereas if it was really wet, there's just no way. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Or you'll see me in the next video. Or you won't. You're going to just see me as a disembodied head and hand. All right. Take care.